Hey guys, I'm Tim Kotzman here with British. You posted that if you're Microsoft or you're any other company that's looking to adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy, there's basically no way to compete with MicroStrategy, or as you called it, Bitcoin strategy in the
Yeah.
bond market, because you cannot compete with a pure play. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So MicroStrategy's journey started off with them saying, we're going to put $500 million of our treasury into Bitcoin. If you are a shareholder, we've assigned $250 million to buy you out because this is the pivot that we're making. So if you are a shareholder of MicroStrategy and you do not agree with this move, we will buy you out at a premium. I think they only had to buy back $60 million or something like that. My memory isn't serving me right now. But what that did was it aligned all of the shareholders of this one company to a Bitcoin strategy, right? So when your shareholders are now fully behind you, you can put, you can go full pedal to the metal, and which is what they've done. And now they're taking it to the next level with $40 billion of borrowing to get into Bitcoin. So in that essence, what's happened here is that MicroStrategy has become the most highest volume volatility play for Bitcoin in the equity space. And if you're Microsoft, you can't just shut off your software business. You can't just shut off your services business. You can't just shut off all these verticals that you've got and pivot everybody to a Bitcoin strategy, because the world would collapse, right? If Microsoft suddenly just stopped working, that wouldn't be too good for the world.
Mhm.
So you cannot compete based on the pure play volatility of Bitcoin, which is what people are looking for, that exposure. And therefore, the question that I posed was, how long does it take for them to say, well, we've got to do this, we've got to convince all of our shareholders to do this, et cetera, et cetera. Since you're doing it and we can't beat your volatility, therefore we can't beat the amount of capital that we can probably raise from the bond market at once exposure to Bitcoin. Why don't we just get exposure to MicroStrategy and let them run the strategy? So that was is a question. I don't know the answer to this question. It's a very interesting thought process because that's what we're all doing, right? We're all saying, right, you're doing this, you're running a strategy really well. Why don't I just pay you to do it for me? And why wouldn't a US company do that, right? Maybe not Microsoft because they're too big, there would be too many liabilities. But how long until a lot of these companies just say, I'm just going to buy MicroStrategy stock? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question, but I think it's coming.
What are your thoughts around the reality that literally just 3 hours ago it was announced, posted by a Bloomberg analyst on X, that MicroStrategy is now the most traded stock in America, above Nvidia, above Tesla, and this hasn't happened in years. Like, what are your thoughts on this moment and where we go from here?
Yeah, about a month and a half ago, I put a video out and I said it's not going to be long until MicroStrategy joins what I want to call the Mag 8, the Magnificent Eight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the Magnificent Seven's portfolio returns, they're fantastic over the last few years. If you compare the QQQ basic Nasdaq to the Mag 7, I think if you put $100,000 into the QQQ for the last, since 2020, the QQQ returned you like $240,000, which is fantastic. The Mag 7 returned you $650,000, which is unbelievable. And then if you just rebalance that and put MicroStrategy in there with an even balance, so the yearly rebalance, your returns are like $740,000, which is, it might not sound like a lot because we're all on Bitcoin Twitter talking about millions of dollars, but for an average portfolio and for a portfolio manager to see that type of lift of returns with a small, basically a 12 point something percent allocation to MicroStrategy, it's unbelievable. And now MicroStrategy is making a case for it by being the most traded, aka liquid company that is in the market. So this is all part of that flywheel effect that you guys have been talking about. And it's inevitable. This is completely and utterly inevitable as Bitcoin goes through its S curve of adoption in the financial world.
Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by Stampseed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium. There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter. When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. How important do you think it is to have a leader representing Bitcoin right now? And I'm referring to Michael Saylor. And is it mostly Michael Saylor, or would you include other characters in making up this, call it an all-star cast of sorts, of kind of all of them amplifying the credibility and bringing this specific moment into focus, but also in this cast of characters, whether you call it Larry Fink, Mike Novogratz, Anthony Pompliano, Dylan LeClaire, Kathy Wood, even if some of these figures speak about, and some even have businesses in both Bitcoin and the broader crypto digital asset space, like, how do you think through, like, can Michael Saylor just be Atlas and like handle it all himself? How much of a role do these cast of characters play? Do we need more characters? How does all of this play out?
Yeah, look, Bitcoin is a monetary network, which means that the more dollars that find their way into Bitcoin, the stronger it gets. And as a result, you need people to decide to put those dollars into Bitcoin. So the people are very, very important. Now, I personally don't think Michael Saylor is the band leader here for what's going on. Remember, right? He's had this strategy rolling since 2020. This is the first time they managed to get $42 billion from the markets. If you don't think that has something to do with Larry Fink coming into the market and BlackRock putting their stamp on Bitcoin, then you're not seeing the game for what it really is. This is a web that's been completed by BlackRock, and now you're starting to see the effects of this. And this is the first time where they've completed a web where if one part of the web starts benefiting, every other part of the web immediately benefits, and the efficiency of those benefits are unreal. So let me just lay this out for you from the game plan perspective. BlackRock owns the vehicle for ownership for institutional and retail, which is IBIT, right? They own the where you buy the Bitcoin, which is Coinbase. They own where you custody the Bitcoin, which is Coinbase. They own all the miners. They own every single facet here. They've now opened up four pools of four pools of capital here. You've got the equities market, you've got the commodities market, you've got the options and derivatives market, and you've got the bond market, right? All of them have opened up. That's 725 trillion dollars of potential capital that now has an escape hatch into Bitcoin. And by the way, BlackRock owns MicroStrategy too, right? So of course, and the beautiful thing about this is let's say Michael Saylor goes and gets $42 billion and then dumps $20 billion of that in 6 months into Bitcoin, drives the price up. Well, guess what immediately benefits, right? IBIT benefits.
Mm.
IBIT goes up if they own the exact same asset. So and by the way, let's say Larry Fink goes to a nation state and says, hey, you should probably put some money into IBIT. They put some money into IBIT. Guess who benefits? MicroStrategy benefits. Why? Because the underlying asset value goes up, which allows them to go and borrow more money. This is the perfect web that's been created by BlackRock. And it's why I've been shouting about people needing to get to one Bitcoin for a year, because this was coming. Ever since BlackRock filed that ETF application, I turned the jets on my message because I knew this was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And now you see people acting fucking surprised. Excuse my language. I don't know if I can swear or not, but I'm sure you can edit that out. But people have basically are surprised that this is happening. What the hell did you expect was going to happen? BlackRock isn't getting into the game to try and make a little bit of fees off of IBIT. They want to own the whole board. They control the whole board. They see the whole board. And and by the way, it's not just BlackRock, right? This is Vanguard. These are like the top, let's say the top 10 to 15 asset managers in the world that are doing this. There's a reason. Everyone said Vanguard doesn't like Bitcoin because they're not allowing people to buy the Bitcoin ETFs. Well, you know what they were allowing people to buy? MicroStrategy.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you think Vanguard's clients feel right now? This is a complete and utter amazing setup of a play here, because no matter which part of the web gets the spider, everyone benefits. Which part of the web, gets the caterpillar, everyone benefits. Every part of the web benefits, and it's a phenomenal thing to see. And we haven't even started yet. Anyone who's excited about these price levels is not going to make it, because as soon as it goes up another 50%, another 100%, you're going to sell out your position. And guess who's going to be there to buy it? The Saylor put that's in the market. That's gonna suck up all of your Bitcoin. And who's it going to benefit? We're going to benefit BlackRock.
Yesterday, you had Michael Saylor on an X space with John Van Eck, with Van Eck asking him about the multiple net asset value. What does that tell you about where we are? Not even so much how early we are, but from an education standpoint, where we are and what that says about, as folks affectionately refer to them, the 1x MNAV bears. Like, what does that tell you, that you have the actual chairman of the board spending time trying to communicate through analogies what they're doing, because as opposed to just letting the market do whatever it's going to do?
That to me is Saylor's charitable side that's doing that. What it proves to me about this conversation, by the way, I had to get my head around this MNAV too, right? And so it's been great for me to go through that process for myself and elevate my own thinking to get around the whole, it should be at a 1 MNAV. But once you realize it, nobody owes you anything, right? Michael Saylor doesn't owe you an explanation as to what's going on. If you're too stupid to understand what's going on, you're too stupid to understand what's going on. And this is the first time someone at this level is sitting down trying to explain to you why it shouldn't be, why you're thinking wrong. And people are arguing with him. It doesn't make any sense to me. At the end of the day, this is he is you're not the client that he's looking for, right? We are not the clients that he's looking for. We have managed to figure this out and get in and get exposure, but we are not the clients. The client is the bond market, and the bond market completely understands this. So this is a very, very charitable thing. That's what it tells me. It tells me that Michael Saylor actually gives a damn about the person that's out there on Twitter or YouTube or everywhere else, the retail person. It tells you that he actually has a heart, that he's actually spending time figuring this out. But what it tells me, from my perspective and my background, is that retail is as dumb as they always were.
Speaking of being charitable, also yesterday, Michael Saylor announcing that he's creating a 3-minute presentation for the Microsoft board.
Good luck.
And he's making himself available to any other executive or board that is reaching out, who are open to the conversation of holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And he's had these resources on his corporate website for years. So is this the moment, or is that an overstatement?
I think it's probably an overstatement right now. Look, I think he said it best on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, which is, I don't like making these phone calls, because with Bitcoin, you have to have a desire to actually figure this problem. You actually have to have a problem to figure out. And I don't think that the Microsoft board or shareholders believe that they have a big enough problem here. I think maybe one shareholder does, which is why they've got this presentation opportunity. But Michael Saylor and doing an explanation in 3 minutes, I really want to see that. I hope they record it, because he's not. He is such an in-depth thinker that I don't know how that 3-minute presentation is going to go. I hope he just tells them, hey, look, all he has to do is say, look, we're about to appreciate more than you guys. And we're doing that because of a Bitcoin strategy. When you figure out that you have a problem, that a company that went from $1.56 billion in 2020 to $111 billion in 2024, when you figure out that you have a problem because this is your competition now, you let me know. And that should be the 3-minute pitch.
What else are people not realizing about MicroStrategy, or is it just not on people's radars yet? I mean, this morning on X, it was posted that some of the Wall Street Bets crowd are buying puts against MicroStrategy, and then you have the kid analysts, going long on MicroStrategy. Like, is that what creates a market? Will the Wall Street Bets crowd do a 180, and we're all going in the same direction here shortly? Like, where are we in the education S curve, if you can even call it that, with all of this?
Yeah, I would say we're not at the beginning. And I would say we're not at the end, right? And I don't know whether we even get to the end or not before this play is just out of the reach of most people, right? One Bitcoin, I've been shouting about one Bitcoin for a year and a half, and now the opportunity's finished, right? I don't, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know many low single digit millionaires that have $95,000 to dump into a speculative asset, right? Most of these people have got 2 or 3 million, $4 million in real estate value. What are they going to do? Chop off a bedroom on one of their properties to get into Bitcoin? So low single digit millionaires are done. You've got we're now entering a period where in any 2 week window within the next 3 months, we could price out anyone under 8, 9, $10 million. And how many people is that in the world, right? So the opportunity from that perspective for real aggressive growth, is done now. For those people, Bitcoin turns into a savings vehicle, basically, right? And that's what it should be. By the way, it's great for that, but from an opportunistic point of view, it's done. So as far as MSTR goes, what are people not getting? You're not understanding who the actual client is for the MSTR bonds. You're not understanding who is buying it. You're not understanding where the capital pool is. You're not even understanding that the capital pool is different from the capital pool that you're thinking about. Most people don't understand that there is a different capital pool for the bond market than there is for the equities market. Most people don't understand these things. So when Michael Saylor comes out to you and says, we've just figured out how to borrow $21 billion in convertible bonds, people go, that doesn't make any sense, because they don't understand that there's a $40 trillion bond market out there in the US. So these are things that there's so much advancement that people have to get through, and basically corporate finance study that people have to do in a very, very short period of time. And I don't know how quick people are going to do that. So the people that are in the trade that are right now sort of have figured it out are going to do great. But everyone watching this, you're late. You're fucking late. So either you're going to get on the bandwagon first, or like my friend who I told, hey, you should probably buy some of this at $290, and he still hasn't done it. He's going to have to buy it at above $500, right? It just is what it is. So you're missing the trade. Not everyone will be saved, right? Not everyone will be saved. Some people will just be destined to use Bitcoin as a savings vehicle. You've got so much content now compared to when I got into the game, compared to when I started buying Bitcoin. You've got so much good content now, including this podcast, what the whole MSTR True North crew have been doing, what everyone's been doing. I'll even put myself in there, right? There's so much content out there to tell you exactly what's going on. That if you're sitting on your hands and you're sitting on your ass, you're going to miss it. And then you're going to wonder why you missed it. And then what's going to happen is you're going to miss it. And then you're going to turn into an M1, an MNAV of one bear, and just constantly shout at the market, saying that the market's wrong when you don't understand where the demand is coming from. The MSTR trade is very, very simple. They're going to the bond market that hasn't seen any returns for the last, decade, and they're saying we have a high volatility asset because it owns Bitcoin, and we want to sell convertible debt. So these guys are used to 5% returns. Now they see 30% returns, and they're basically buying it in bucket loads, right? And then MSTR takes that money, goes and buys Bitcoin, shrinks the MNAV, and then allows the MNAV to expand again. And that's what's going on here. So if you think that the MNAV needs to shrink to one, I mean, Saylor said it himself. It's like saying that any oil company should be valued at the amount of oil that is already dug out of the ground and is sitting in the barrels. How does that make any sense? So you're telling me that the business value of the oil company is zero? The fact that they have the refineries, the fact that they have the drills, the fact that they have the staff, all of that service that they're providing is completely valueless? That's a dumb way of looking at it. And I empathize because it's the way I was looking at it, right? But the way that you should be thinking about this is MicroStrategy is providing value to an underserved market, which is the bond market, in order to turn that capital and provide returns that they haven't seen in a decade. And therefore, they're getting boatloads of capital. And now MicroStrategy is getting enough capital where they can actually influence the status of a market. And that's what's happening here.
When you were in the middle of saying MNAV one person, I thought you were going to say NPC. So, yeah. So we had IBIT options on the IBIT BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF start trading yesterday. you have the usual cast of characters on CNBC this morning, some of them saying that the options on the ETFs will decrease the volatility on Bitcoin. Then you have some notable analysts on X saying that they're going to increase the volatility on Bitcoin. Can you walk us through the options? What, is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? The options on the ETFs and what you think it will do to the volatility of the digital commodity, which is Bitcoin.
I'm going to say something to you, right? And people have not picked up on this because it's even more complicated to actually break down than MSTR. The options market and the derivatives market and the options, particularly on the ETFs, is bigger news than MSTR. And people don't understand this. People are thinking MSTR is huge news. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what's just happened on the option side. The option side is a $2.4 trillion a day worth of liquidity in the US, right? And what needs to happen if I buy it, so what happened yesterday with IBIT? There was $1.9 billion worth of trading volume that happened. 80% of that was calls, was call options, and 20% was put options. So what happens when a market maker sells you a call option? Let's say you're going along. I went as balls deep as I could go on some of these IBIT options now. So when I bought them and they were sold to me, there is a risk on the market maker side that one day they might actually have to deliver me that IBIT stock, right? So now what they have to do is they have to go and actually generate some exposure to the underlying asset to shrink the delta, which is the rate of change on the trade that I've placed. So they now actually have to go buy the underlying asset. As soon as they buy the IBIT, guess what IBIT has to do? They have to go buy the Bitcoin. So people are not realizing how much of a quote unquote flywheel, I use that word again, just the options market is. And this is $2.4 trillion a day worth of liquidity. Now, all of that's never going to go into just Bitcoin. But the fact that they managed to do $1.9 billion of volume and no one's talking about it is remarkable to me. Because everyone jumps up and down when MicroStrategy announces $2 billion like they did at 0%, right? Everyone's jumping up and down. They just sold senior notes at 0%, et cetera, et cetera. These options came out, and on one fund in day one, because none of the other funds were trading, they did $1.9 billion worth of volume. And the market makers have to go get exposure to shrink the delta. So they have to, it's called delta hedging, but it's complicated to explain to retail. That's why people think that the MicroStrategy news is bigger than this. This is the biggest news that is in Bitcoin right now, and no one's paying attention to it because everyone's too focused on what MicroStrategy is doing. The delta hedging that they will have to do if we start getting $50 billion of options and 80% of that is long interest is going to be unbelievable. And you're going to see price rises like you've never seen. Now, what does that do, by the way? Going back to the web, as they do that, it increases the value of the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy holds. Now, MicroStrategy can go to the bond market and borrow more money. As MicroStrategy goes and borrows more money and buys Bitcoin, the delta of the option that I bought on IBIT increases. So now the market maker has to hedge that even more. So now they got to go do it again. So this is the web that's being built up, and it's all founded by BlackRock. So well, it's not just BlackRock, right? That's giving them a lot of credit, which they deserve. But it's all market makers. This is how the American markets work. We've just never seen a volatile asset like this. Now, in terms of will it smooth out volatility, those both analysts are right. It is going to smooth out volatility. I predict it's going to smooth out volatility to the downside and increase volatility to the upside.
How long is it going to be before we see what you just described? Is it days, weeks, months?
It happened yesterday. What happened yesterday to the price? It happened yesterday, right? As soon as the option started trading, we saw new all-time highs. The option prices were all over the place. I'm up 30% in one day on my call options that I bought yesterday, right? So it's happening already. We've seen it today as well. We've seen 95,000. We hit 95,000. Like this is happening right now. And by the way, the majority of those options yesterday were bought at the $100 strike on IBIT for next month. And the $100 strike basically represents Bitcoin being $175,000. So you can see where people are thinking this is going to go. It doesn't have to go there, but you can see where people are thinking this is gonna go, and the only direction is up.
Because it's a directional bet.
Yeah.
So when is retail going to wake up? $100,000?
Don't care. Do not care. Could not care anymore about retail. Retail is always the dumbest money. It's always the last money into the trade. And so if you're on Bitcoin Twitter and you're in this community and you're watching all the content and whatever, you have no idea what a small percentage of the overall market that you are. And the fact that you've got access to this high-level corporate finance education that is hard for anyone to understand. The fact that it's being broken down on YouTube for you is phenomenal, right? This is the type of thing that they want to keep
Yeah.
a secret. This is the type of thing they want to keep a secret because they want to use retail as exit liquidity at some point. So yeah, no, I don't care. I do not care about retail. And I've said this right from the start. I think you have to get to one Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is the inflection point. And what do you do now? It's too late, right? One Bitcoin is possible for most people at $15,500, which is the bear market low. Possible at $30,000. Possible at $40,000. There's 55 million millionaires in the world, right? And the majority of them are at the 10 to $20 million level. Well, we've already priced out the $1, 2, $3 million millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to price out the $6 to $9 million millionaires. What happens when the price of Bitcoin goes to $300,000 and then the strategic reserve kicks in and now Bitcoin's trading at $1 million? The game's up. The game is over. You've got a matter of days of panic right now to get to that one Bitcoin level. And that's the inflection point for me. There's many people on the internet that are doing all the weak shit and talking about get to 0.2 and get to 0.1 and all this other shit. And that's fine. But the inflection point, the North Star is one Bitcoin. You have to get there. And if you haven't got there, you're about to be left behind. So what I can't say, what are people supposed to do? I don't know, because you have 3 years to wake the fuck up.
So if it's too late for most people to now get to one Bitcoin, when is Bitcoin going to stop being referred to as a speculative asset? When is it no longer a speculative asset?
Yeah, I predict that happens once we hit a CAGR of 10 to 15%. And that there's a long way to go for that because we've got to get all this capital flooded into Bitcoin. We are hitting an S curve of adoption, and this is what's going to happen here. I predicted this right from the start. Whether you're a stock to flow fan, whether you like your power opinions or whatever bullshit you're thinking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was all good and entertaining, right? And then what happens? BlackRock comes in the game, sets up this web, this flywheel starts taking off in all different directions, and this capital starts finding its way in. And when you study maths, what generally happens is things start off looking like a curve fit or a power law or whatever, and then an S curve kicks off, and all of that breaks, and then it just goes through this period of adoption. And right now, what we're seeing is Bitcoin being adopted by the majority of capital in the world. Because unlike what most people like to believe, Bitcoin is a monetary network, not a happy hippie feelings high five network. It is a monetary network, which means it has to suck in dollars. It has to suck all those dollars in. And that's the S curve of adoption that we're going to go through now for the next few years.
When is the United States going to actually wake up and actually have a sense of urgency about buying Bitcoin? And the reason I say it like that is because you already have the state of Pennsylvania introducing legislation to adopt a Bitcoin treasury on the state level. It seems pretty freaking obvious to me and many others that you already have other nations buying at any price. And you have senators yesterday, one in particular, saying, oh yeah, we hope that we're going to get this established sometime in 2025. I mean, the United States is going, not retail, the United States is going to be somebody's exit liquidity if they don't get their act together. I don't care if there's a red wave. I don't care that there's a red wave. It doesn't matter if they don't actually get off their asses and do it in January, if not sooner, which like the current administration is not going to do it. They should. They should have a patriotic duty to do it. Like, what the heck? What the heck? Like, when is the
Yeah,
United States actually going to get their act together? Because everybody over here is celebrating and saying, hey, guys, this is so great. Everything's going up. The United States is leading. No, based on what Lemus said yesterday, the United States, if you wait until Q2, Q3, Q4 of 2025, the U.S. is not leading. The U.S. is no longer leading if that happens. Why is everybody asleep?
Well, the good news
Do we need Max Kaiser to get this crazy? Like, hello, Max, can you please send a memo to the United States, which he's been doing for a decade, and say, get your act together? I mean, it doesn't sound like a red wave to me. It doesn't sound like the United States to me. It sounds like we need to get moving.
Yeah, listen, look, at the end of the day, I agree with you, but I hope it takes as long as possible. I hope we don't see a strategic reserve until Q4 of 2025. I hope we don't see this. I hope it takes that long, because you know what that'll do? That'll allow all of these institutions like BlackRock and everybody else to get their clients into it, pump these numbers up. We might get to 300 or 400,000. We might get to whatever. And then they got to really turn the money printers on to get those 200,000 coins a year. So, who cares? Let them take as long as they want, right? Because in the meantime, Michael Saylor is putting a $42 billion put in the market. And it's working, right? So we'll let the US take as long as it wants. It can happen whenever it wants to happen. We'll let the United Kingdom take as long as it wants. It can happen whenever it's going to happen. Don't care anymore. At the end of the day, our governments are filled with incompetent people, and we can talk. Last time we had a conversation, it was before the election, and I asked you a very simple question: what happens if they steal the election for Trump? Right? And guess what happened?
Apparently, it doesn't matter, because we're hopeful that we'll have a legislative framework sometime in 2025, even if you started off with the executive order, and even if you just keep the Bitcoin that the United States has.
Yeah, look.
Okay. I mean, we're already there. You're just saying that you're not going to do anything beyond where we already are. So, like, if you want the UAE to take leadership on the world stage, this is a great way to do it.
Which I do, because that's where I live. Right, that's where I live most of the year. I hope they listen. The advantage that the U.S. is always going to have is you have the money printer, right? So you're going to be able to print as much money as it's needed to outbid everybody else. So that's the good advantage that the US has. But yeah, absolutely. I live in the UAE. I love the UAE. UAE's run like how I would want America and the United Kingdom to be run, which sounds like it basically feels like a group of men with absolute common sense sitting around a table, smoking tobacco, thinking what would work for this country, and let's make it happen. So, and it looks like, listen, it looks like that's where America is going right now with the election. And it looks like everything's moving in the right direction. So we'll see how it all pans out. But
I am absolutely not convinced. You're putting a Bitcoin crypto fanatic in every single position in the federal government, and the tenor in these public conversations from senators is still that we're going to try to get to it sometime in 2025. That doesn't sound like a winning conversation to me. I'm just trying to be a patriot. I live in the United States. I want the United States to win. It doesn't sound like we're winning. It doesn't sound like I'm getting sick of winning. It doesn't sound like we're winning at all.
Listen, at the end of the day, whenever the US starts buying, it has an unlimited money printer to outbid everybody else. So I want everybody else to get their bids in. I want everybody else to get their positions in. And then I want the US to start bidding on Bitcoin. So whether it happens in Q1, I mean, he's going to get inaugurated when? January 20th, from what I understand. So, he's going to have a few things to do before then. There's a couple wars going on that they need to sort out. And then you've got this bill to deal with. Whether he gets it done in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, don't care.
So when you say there's wars that they have to, you're saying there's wars that they have to sort out. So you're basically on camera right now saying that the United States cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. For the last 4 years, you haven't been doing that.
It sounds like we have a lot of work to do. That's what it
sounds
like
we have a lot of work to do. Absolutely. And guess what? It sounds good. Everything right now is very happy with the election result. As I said to you, I would have no problem if the election was stolen for Trump and the team that's in place. It sounds like you got a really great team. It sounds like, everyone's moving into the right place. But You have rules, and those rules state Trump can't do anything until he's inaugurated. So we have to wait until January 20th. And I hope that whatever happens, all the forces that are moving in the background manage to get everybody in before January 20th or whenever this strategic reserve gets approved. If it gets approved, we'll see.
Just sometime in 2025, British. We're hopeful.
Maybe
We're
why
we're,
not
we're hopeful.
2026? Why
Yeah,
not
yeah,
2026? That would be good.
yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, the euphoria in parts of the United States right now from a digital assets aspect is just unbelievable. And there is a lot to be optimistic and hopeful about. But it's time for action. I mean, it's not time to say we're hopeful for 2025. It's just,
Yeah, you're
it's,
catching everyone. Everyone seems to be counting their chickens before they hatch, right? And that's what politics does to you. And that's why it is what it is. Until the strategic reserve is approved and they start buying 200,000 coins a year, it's all BS to me.
any closing thoughts? There was
Yeah,
a
look,
lot there.
there's a lot there. There's a lot there in a short interview. So, look, at the end of the day, the biggest news that's going to impact price is the options. The MSTR is absolutely huge news. And the fact that everyone is getting all of the guys that are part of the group that you're part of, MSTR True North, sitting there trying to explain this to you is unbelievable. And that's where I give credit to the male desire to be able to lord over other people and say, I was fucking right, because that's why they're all doing it. That's why you guys are all doing it. That's why I became British Hodl. I've been talking about Bitcoin, creating Bitcoin content for a year and a half. Have not had a single sponsor, not sold a single thing, not taken any money. Why? Because I want to look people in the face and say I was fucking right. And that's what all of the MSTR True North guys are doing. That's why everyone's in this. And that's a beautiful thing. This is an unbelievable opportunity to educate. If you're sitting there going, oh, this is a great interview, I'm going to take a look at MSTR sometime tomorrow, you are a moron. Because my friends have literally been doing that over the last week. And they could have got in $300 on Thursday last week, and we're now on Wednesday, and they're going to have to spend $500 a share to get in. So take the time right now. It's fucking urgent. And if you're gonna ignore the urgency, well, it's okay. Not everyone is gonna make it, and that's perfectly okay. I've come to the conclusion that the time for my message is coming to a close of getting to one Bitcoin. And the people that are going to get to one Bitcoin from now on are going to be educated by BlackRock, right? Because their advisor is going to call them and say, hey, you need to get to 100 Bitcoin or 200 Bitcoin or whatever it is. And their clients are going to, and BlackRock's going to take care of them. Everybody else, it's too fucking late, almost. You got matter of days, matter of weeks now where you've got an opportunity to pivot those assets. But the options market is the biggest news. It's $2.4 trillion worth of liquidity. The delta hedging on that is going to be unbelievable. It's going to create the flywheel effect on the option side, which is then going to create the flywheel effect on the MSTR side, which is then going to create the flywheel effect on the nation state side. So all of this is coming together well. BlackRock deserves a standing ovation for the service that they've done for BlackRock for Bitcoin here. A lot of people are not going to like me saying that, but really, the moment they filed for that ETF, you can go look at my channel. That's when I turned the jets on, because I knew this was coming. Remember those fucking morons that were saying BlackRock's going to get into Bitcoin, put all of their clients into Bitcoin just to crash the price and destroy Bitcoin? I remember that conversation. That was going on for 6 months. I was being called a BlackRock cuck. I was being called all this stupid shit because everybody thought this is what they do. No, they control markets. They take over markets. They don't think linearly. They think holistically, and they own every single part of this. This is a foregone conclusion at this point.
They dominate markets, is what they do.
Yes.
Just look at their AUM. So, two quick things. One, none of this is financial advice. Number two, we're not asking anyone or telling anyone or even hinting that anyone should buy anything. What we're doing is saying, please educate yourself. Please spend your most valuable resource, which is your time, and do your own research. That's it.
Yep. Don't be fucking ignorant.
British, Thank you.
My pleasure.